Pi I blew that. Let's try that again. Happy Pi Day Friday, Scott.
Happy Pi Day Friday to you, Dave.
I'm off to a
Hey,
rolling start for a Friday.
awesome.
Well, we're here. Good to see you again, my friend.
Always my pleasure. Always my
We
pleasure.
kind of missed you last week. You were here in keyboard.
Last week you were here in keyboard. Last week you were here.
Hang on, let's adjust that audio.
Hang on, let's adjust that audio.
All right.
I don't hear any echo.
That was all on me.
I
Okay.
should have kept talking just so I know when it went away.
All on me.
Well, anyways, it's good to have you back. You were missed in face last week, but at least you were here
Yeah.
on keyboard.
But you know what? We finished the first writes for our third edition Security Plus book, and that was kind of the driving, staying up very, very late every night for a couple of weeks, and that was kind of the final push and got me there before meeting with my publisher at 4 o'clock on last Friday, and it was a good meeting.
That's
So,
great news. I'm sure it was.
yeah. So still a lot of work left, as you know, but other people might not.
Please.
Writing these big giant textbook things takes, no matter how many times we think we're going to pull it off in 6 months, they take 9 months, 9 months every time. And once we get through the first write cycle, some of the writers will drop out, and others like me, who are as much editors as writers, will jump in and have to do all the tech in corps and the copy edit in corps and all the different page layout and page proofing. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that still goes into it for the next couple of months, but the heavy lifting is done. So very exciting for us.
Well, that's good news. At the risk of showing under our skirts, so to speak, something came up on Udemy today, and I don't think I didn't have a good answer for it, and I ignored it for the moment. You have also been working on questions for Total Tester for the new Sec Plus, right?
Right.
Okay, so those will happen if and when, well, not if, but when we shoot the Udemy course, we can expect a new set of 601 question course to go up.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Just kind of, I'm doing if I write 5 to 10 a day, then over the course of 60 days, I'll have a fairly decent set of questions. So,
Yeah, that's great.
and without
Okay,
trying to
super.
kill myself at the end.
Well, greetings everyone. Glad you're all here.
Right.
This is Dramas. Dave Rush Ask Me Anything and Scott. We're here to talk about all things CompTIA and their relationship with Raspberry Pi, how we can use Pis to study for technological topics of any kind, CompTIA or brain surgery, neurosurgery, whatever you got. If it ain't religion and if it ain't politics, we'd love to talk about it today. I am Dave Rush. I'm the senior instructor at Total Seminars. I work for Scott beside me. When I'm not doing stand-up training or working on courseware, I kind of do a little bit of everything else. Whatever project Scott's working on, he gives me new projects to either help him out or to do other things in the company. And of course, on Fridays, we get together and we do this. What do you do, sir?
Well, I am Scott Jernigan. I'm editor-in-chief for Total Seminars, and I'm a longtime collaborator, writer, and editor with Mike Meyers, the president of the company, whom you see if you hang out on these broadcasts every Monday and Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Time. I'm also an instructor and have been teaching how to build and fix computers and networks and secure them for a long time. So that's what I do. And I show up on Dave's internet broadcast just to provide some color, and because see, my shirt's blue, that's the color. And hang out and basically let Dave run wild with his discussion of.
Well, keep up the good work because I got something weird going on here.
Okay.
That's just really weird. What is going on? Oh, I know what's going on. Okay. I can fix this. Go ahead. I'll be offline
right, so keep going. So the reason we're doing these Monday, Wednesday, Friday AMAs is for those of us who are in lockdown and still studying for CompTIA exams, that it gives us, those of us who are teachers, and those of you who are students, a chance to communicate. And you can ask us questions. We provide answers. If we don't know the answer, we'll do the right thing and say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And we write those things down. And then on the next show or on Mike's next show, we come up with the answers, and part of that is so fun. Not part of it, just the whole process of this. It's so fun for us. We miss you and want you to succeed in your studies. So here we are. Ask us questions.
All right, thank you. I'm back.
Okay.
Just checking notes. Yeah, I have this set of notes that I wrote a million years ago when we started this process, and then we sort of semi-deformalized it. And there's lots of things that I wrote down to do at the beginning of each session, and I don't have that anymore, or I don't do that anymore. So I'm just looking over to see if there's anything that maybe I should mention, or maybe I should just pull out of this template. So you just covered the good one. If you've got an in-depth question, let us know. So let's put up some contact info. Let them know some good ways to find us.
Sure. Sounds great.
I have contact info here somewhere. This page.
Contact info is good. Hello, Kevin.
I have had, while I'm bringing this up, a really busy day. Finishing up prep for this material today. We got tons of chicken quarters out in the smoking pit that I fired up about 7 o'clock this morning, and all the sundry things. All right, in business here. So got some contact info. So again, ask us questions. If you're live here on YouTube today watching this with us, ask here now. If you're not, or if you got a long question, you don't want to post it on there. If you're watching on the archive later, we still want to research those questions and answer them and take on anything you got. So get in touch with me at daver@totalsem.com or Scott at scottj@totalsem.com. We're both steamers. Thinking about all the connotations of that. We are both game players who use the Steam platform. So I'm drushtx, and Scott is Scarheart.
So what are you playing these days, Dave?
Wow, I was going to say it, but I'm semi-non-disclosed on it. I am playing Total Seminars. How's that?
Yeah.
I get up in the morning, I hit my computer, give or take 7:30, take a quick lunch break sometimes, and maybe a little dinner break, and then I work till midnight, and then go back and do it again. And last week I did get a couple of minutes on Borderlands. Ordered my new Borderlands 2. I've downloaded it, but I haven't installed it.
Nice.
Yeah, for Borderlands 3, but hey, also don't forget, everybody, it is a big favor to your brethren if you like and subscribe. I don't get anything out of it. Total Seminars doesn't get anything out of it. But for that lone soul out there who says, man, I would really like to know how to put together a DNS box on a Raspberry Pi, maybe there's a YouTube lesson and they Google search that, your likes are what drives our hits to the top, and that's going to get people to find us and learn this highly critical information. So, yeah, look at that. I just saw a new like pop up. Thank you.
Well, there we go. And of course, I personally get a lot when you out of when you like and subscribe, because when you like, it just makes my day brighter.
Well, there is that. So they're not sending you check directly, huh?
No. No remuneration or anything.
Well, let's give our viewers some checks.
Okay.
Kind of, sort of. Hey, good news. If you look at this very closely, this is a different discount special this week than the ones we've been pumping out for the last 5 or 6 weeks that haven't changed. So, for you joining us on these AMAs, either for Mike's AMAs or Scott and mine, we've got a special for you. It's 50% off all 8+ and Net Plus Total Tester and Total Tester / Sims bundles. That's not right. I copied this from your notes the other day, but I thought we took one of these out. Can you clarify that for me, Scott?
I can clarify. This is what Kathy gave me.
Oh, then this is good. Okay.
Yeah. So it's both the standalone Total Tester and the Total Tester bundles.
Okay.
So.
All right. Super.
Both
So
or either.
head on. Go ahead.
I said both or either. Yeah.
Very good. So head on over to totalsem.com. Snatch up a bunch of loot, and on your checkout, use the code 011121. That was the date of Monday this week, and that'll get you this discount. Good through this Sunday, December 17th. Anything good over here? And then we'll save that page for when it comes up next. And we're cooking. So,
right.
Who's joined us today?
So Andre joining us from the Netherlands, mentioned that if you run into problems on any of our products, I am editor-in-chief, right? That's a title as well as a job. So any errors or any typos or anything like that you find, email me directly, scottj@totalsim.com. I like it.
Okay, so did Andre find something that needed your attention in those?
No, he's just harassing me.
Okay. Hi, Simon Edling. Good to see you. Well, heck, let's start from the beginning here. Tullowit checked in at the beginning of always. Tullowit and I were on the Discord channel a little bit ago. He gave me a very accurate answer to a question that I asked. We'll share with everybody. But in the meantime, let me invite you and tell you about, anyways, our Discord channel. It's not our Discord channel. This is the unofficial Mike Meyers AMA Discord channel. We actually have nothing to do with operating it or setting it up or anything like that. We are regular participants in it on occasion. It was set up by a good friend of ours, Jose Braden. And if I share this with you,
that'd be great.
This code changes every day, but you can always find it with a Discord search, or with a Google search. Just look for Discord unofficial Mike Meyers, and you will find this. But if you're here today and you haven't joined us over on Discord, you can find us at discord.gg, and these letters, which are case sensitive. Oh man, I missed my open parentheses on this. I'm pathetic. But we've got over 100 people over there right now. There's all kinds of topics under discussion. We talk about the things that we present in the dramas and the AMA and everything else. People have their own things going on. There's a Kali sub forum that's been created there, and some other really cool sub forums.
And there's the voice.
Right, we've got a voice and video channel. So
we sometimes get into.
Right, so oftentimes after we do an AMA or a dramas, Scott or I or Mike or all three of us or some combination thereof join up over there, and we just all shoot the breeze with anybody who's willing to come on over and talk about anything you want to talk about. Doesn't have to be technical in that case. We can talk about anything.
Yeah, it tends to be a lot less formal.
Yeah.
than these official Total Seminars products. So.
Yeah, there's a couple of people on there whose language just so shocks me because I'm so used to us being so pristine here. And somebody might drop a bomb and it's like, oh my God, oh no, that's all right. We're not on an AMA. We're good. Right. So Armando P is here. Hello, everyone, including Armando P and Alan Duggan. Nice to see you. And RedTube3, I'm sorry, I developed a mythology around that name, and that's what you're going to be in my mind for the rest of life. I know that's not where that's coming from, but you totally dispelled my myth, and it hurts.
Aw, Dave.
Nice to see you, Andre. Well, I saw you mentioned me in something on Discord today, but I don't remember what it was, but it doesn't look like something that I need to give an answer to. Okay, and the echo was famous. The real reason that we can't, oh man, you're going to do 10 commandments here? Save that for Discord, bud, but tell you what, the real reason we can't have the 10 commandments in a courthouse, you can't post, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not, okay. That's old. But yeah, I do anything that comes from George Carlin, I'm a fan. I still have an iPod in my car.
Really?
For 45 different reasons. But hey, I've got close to 60,000 songs on it, so I do everything with it. And
it works.
There's not many comedians that I have on it, but I pretty much have every George Carlin routine on there. There's good stuff.
Yeah, he was a very funny guy.
Yep.
Oh, and he brought up Carlin, of course, because your shirt.
Yeah, I see that.
Talk about the shirt behind you, Dave.
Yeah.
Since we're not being political, what does it actually say?
Well, it says, never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. Yeah, it's political, but either side can claim that about the other side. So it's politically apolitical, or it's agnostically political. So I felt okay with it. I just didn't feel rock star today. I felt like I was inundated with all the news over the last 5 or 6 days. So this is my catharsis.
Absolutely.
Full seminars in full VR. That would be so cool to watch this in VR.
It would be.
We would have to get our 3D cameras.
Yep.
You can see the
Actually,
back.
I have been before the lockdown. One of our lead videographer people, Zach, and I have been in talks about, what would it take to actually do a serious VR course, and how could that enhance our training? And the enhance our training, I could easily see that. I mean, to be able to say, okay, we're going into the machine now.
Yeah.
It's like, why not? It'd be cool.
Underneath, through. Oh.
Yeah. So,
Well, Mike is going shopping. Tell him to pick up a good 3D setup.
Yeah, sure. Sounds great. Also, the price of.
That's nice, Andre. When I write an email to Scott, often it's because I found a typo in the videos. Hey, Andre, if you're, if anybody, in fact, if you are using the Udemy courses and you find a typo, mistake, or something like that, we mostly got them boiled down, but there are one or two that you may run across, and there are one or two that we know about that are still there, but we can't fix, but because we can't get back in the offices and do some of the editing that's required. But if you're using any of those things, just post a message in the Q&A forum for that video, and that will come to me. And if it's something that needs to be fixed in a book or something like that, I send that on to Scott. If it's something that needs to be fixed in a video, a misspeak, we got a few typos there. We had a person typing out our banners a little while back who wasn't the greatest wordsmith ever to cross paths. Wonderful, wonderful man. I loved him to death, and he's gone off back to school now. But there's a few typos, and so they get added to the editing queue. And if we ever do get back in the offices, there's this nice pile, a little list for somebody to go through and change word spellings. How's that?
Cross some T's and dot some I's. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm looking at Tullowit's explanation for the accurate answer that he gave me.
Mm-hmm.
I often worry about metric. I think there are things that should be metricized that aren't, and I'm curious about some things that have been metricized that I don't understand. And I was just wondering today about fractions, what they would look like in metric. So, like 1/4, what is that in metric?
0.25.
That's not metric. That's decimal.
1/4. 1/4 of a meter would be.
I get the
25.
yeah. Let's see. You're thinking about it. It's kind of like thinking about what would a chair look like if your knees bent backward like ostriches instead of forward like humans.
Well, we could go all the way to like the Platonic ideal of the chair. Its essence is its essence, right? The chair. It has a.
And maybe 12 chairs.
Oh.
You and I are the only, dying to see how many people get that reference.
Wow. Okay. All right. So let's talk technology. Let's talk some computers. There was one question earlier, way back at 2:08 from Andre, and a substantive question dealing specifically with the Pi. And he asks, I want to SSH into my Pi. It works, but as soon as I change the default user and password, it doesn't work anymore. Not with the new user password combo, not even after a reboot. What am I doing wrong?
I have no idea.
That's one answer.
How did you change? That's it. Okay, so there's two ways to change the password. One of them is to use the passwd command. I think the syntax is, it already knows who you are, so it's sudo password and then the new password. But I don't think that passes to the SSH server correctly. I think what you have to do is go into the utility apps icon on the main screen, and you can even do this from the command line. But use the here. Let's bring it up. I got all these booted, so you can bring them up, right?
Sure.
VNC. Well, I slid right over that question too. I saw Kevin, and then I saw yours right after his. let's go into this one.
That's why we tag team this. Hey, Elbow. Good to see you.
Elbow's here.
It's lunchtime.
But is Alice here?
No, Alice is not here. She's taking a break.
Yeah, I saw her message on Discord at some point today. So where are we going here? I'm going to this that I'm sharing.
We're all trembling in anticipation, Dave.
Yeah, me too. There it is. Okay, so there's at least 3 ways to change a password. One is to use the password command, and let's do it this way: password help. You can do password status, lock. Where's my change? Unlock, warn days, all, delete, expire, help. For password status. It's correct. They don't show the change function in here, but that's not the method I want you to use anyway, so I don't care. I want you to either use this one.
Andre says he used the sudo raspi config.
Okay, that should work, but there's a way that doesn't work, so I'll show you that.
Okay.
So try this one, under system, change password. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to muckle this up right now, but it's all straightforward. But make sure whenever you're in the raspi config utility or in the GUI utility that you do the OK, apply, or save changes as appropriate. So let's go do what you did. Sudo raspi config. Yeah, I pronounce it raspi too. Just say that for spelling purposes. Oh, crap. Wonder what I just did.
I don't know, but probably not.
Well, it was already max size, so it's not going to hurt anything. Interface, display, system options.
Password.
Yeah, so you got password and you got hostname, and it only changes it for Pi. Okay, so you're doing that now. You've made the change. When you finish, when you click the word finish over here, don't Control-C to get out of it, that's when the change takes effect. I'm going to let this reboot to deal with that accidental change that I made. It's not going to cost you anything, and it'll come back. And we can look at something else when that comes back. It'll be cool.
Okay, sounds good.
So as soon as you do that, you got to close out of PuTTY, of course. You got to do a reboot. You can't change password on the fly with that utility. And then, of course, when you go into PuTTY again and reconnect, you'll use Pi. Now, remember, it's case sensitive. So the password is case sensitive and the account is case sensitive. So if you've changed the password, make sure you're using the right case. You could really be scrooged here if you don't remember what case you use for what letters or anything like that. Now, the good news is Raspberry Pi OS doesn't have a limited number of tries that locks you out of that. You can keep trying and trying and trying until you get it right. But, of course, the real joy is when you set a password, you don't get to see what you type in. So if you did a typo on there, added an extra character or something like that, and that shouldn't be a problem because you have to do it twice. All right, it's back up. I want to take you back there, and I want to ask Andre a question. Share right here.
Will Andre have an answer?
Yeah.
The real question.
So if you did not successfully change the default password, when your system boots up to the GUI, you will see this message. I have purposely always left the default password on all my lab ones here so that we can see it and we can remember it very easily. So if you're seeing this message, you didn't successfully change the password. If you don't see this message, all you see is a shiny new screen like this, then you have successfully changed the password. Now you're using SSH, so you won't know until or unless you hook this thing up to a monitor and have the GUI running. So I don't have the firm answer yet. There's more information that we need, but those are my theories.
Excellent.
Because I'm a theoretician.
Oh, what? Dave, I don't think that's a word.
It is.
Theoretician? I guess maybe it is.
It absolutely is. Yes.
Theoreticist.
That's like a female country singer from the 60s, right? Theoreticist. Oh, shoot. I don't know. Loretta Lynn. Theoreticist Lynn. All right.
So Andre says he's setting it up headless for the first time. So no GUI, just putty.
All right. Well, you may need your GUI to fix this. But again, try some different iterations of how you did caps, or just try it all with caps lock. Maybe you had that invoked when you set the new password, or caps lock off. And are my theories.
Okay. Good stuff. You can always follow up on Discord afterwards if we need to.
You bet. I'll be there.
So all good.
I did a refresh on my screen, and okay, so we were at 208.
Yeah, and there haven't been I haven't seen any other substantive questions come in.
Okay, good.
We can and probably should just launch into the day's discussion, which is.
Yeah, so I'm going to do the usual thing. We're going to do a recap of what we did last week. I want to do news and tricks and trips of the day because that was kind of fun. And then that leads into what are we going to do today, and we can talk then about what we're going to do today. So I'll leave you to watch those.
Okay.
And I'll bring up Uncle Notes. Hey, and they're here. And if I put them up here near this corner, my eyes will be kind of near the camera.
So for those of you who are new, I keep the live feed over on a monitor to my right. And so every once in a while, I'll be glancing to see what's happening. And Dave will be saying something very serious discussion. And one of you will be throwing out some ridiculously hilarious thing. And I'll start laughing while Dave is being very serious. I'm not laughing at Dave. I'm actually following the conversation as well. So there you go.
Probably. Sometimes he does laugh at Dave.
Well done.
What do we got here? All right. So last week we did Audacity on the Pi. It was fun. It was a little disjointed because that's just the nature of the hodgepodge of equipment that I have to set up here. It didn't lend itself well to a really good lesson. But what we did learn is that on a Raspberry Pi with a current version of the OS, you can install Audacity with 3 simple commands. 2 that you always do anytime you're going to install anything. Sudo add update, sudo apt upgrade, and then the third one, sudo apt install Audacity. You've got it. And then what we did is we spent a little time showing some of the features and functions that Audacity can do. It's really, really cool. Found you a good website where you could go and pull down multi-track compositions and play with individual tracks or play with multiples. And it took a minute to show you how to manually and automatically install the Nyquist plugins. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Today, I had a plan, and like all good plans, as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get hit. And so I got hit working on this thing. It dawned on me as I was working on the project that without a foundation of some kind, the project anybody can follow, but you can't take advantage of what is all there. So I've reworked this to be a 2-parter, and there's a lot of good benefits that have come out of this. We're going to talk about DNS, and we're going to build a DNS server on a Raspberry Pi. That's not a real complicated project, and I've broken that out into 2 parts. So today we're going to talk about DNS, and we're going to look at this from an operating system agnostic perspective, from a hardware agnostic perspective. This is a class on DNS. It lends itself in overkill form to what you need to know for A+, those of you who are studying that. There's a lot of good stuff in here that fits well with the Network Plus objectives. And even in Security Plus, I'm going to at least touch on some topics lightly about the security aspects of DNS. Okay, yeah, I can see that. I kind of got a little louder as I leaned back. thinking my mic was farther away, but it's right here.
It's all good, man.
Okay, so doing servers in two parts. First part, we're going to look into functioning details of DNS servers. We'll look at some different types of DNS servers. We'll see how a standalone DNS server can work in a local environment. That's all I got for DNS, perhaps, in my local environment, besides what my ISP wants me to use, and I want to get away from what my ISP wants. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of info that says many of us, because of some of our earlier presentations, have a Pi hole in here, and that adds some real benefits to also having your own DNS server. And I'll show you the one or two minor steps that you have to do to get those two guys working together. So
Sounds like a great day.
yeah, I'm going to look at today at least the titles and functions of 4 very popular DNS servers. Many of them are available for the 3 major platforms, Windows, excuse me, Mac, and Linux. Mostly it's a Linux world when it comes to making your own DNS server. Exception, Windows Server, and there are plenty of third-party little DNS server products that can run on Windows, but they don't make it into the top 4 list of this is what you probably ought to be running if you want to build a really good one.
All right.
Okay, news, tricks, and trips of the day. Raspberry Pi operating system got an update on January 11th. What did it add? 5 major things. Native support for Epson printers. I don't know if every Epson printer is supported in there, but Raspberry Pi organization seems to be putting a lot of effort into improving our ability to work with printers. And that's always been one of those things in the Linux world that's been grab your wrench, grab your hammer, grab your code tools, and eventually you might be able to make this printer work. So that's a really, really great thing in my mind.
Very cool.
They've added screen reader support in Chromium browser. So Chromium's been the browser of choice that delivers with Raspberry Pi OS. So now they've integrated a screen reader so it will read your screen to you in the various pages. That's kind of an interesting thing.
That is nice.
Yeah, they updated some languages. They did something that everybody has been doing in January. They removed Adobe Flash Player. That is a dead product across the entire spectrum of PC dumb and operating system dumb. Is that a word? And it's a pain because I and many thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds, have some cameras that go back to a day that require Adobe Flash. So I'll be keeping an old copy of an old browser that's still got Flash in it until I'm willing to replace those cameras.
Right.
And they got rid of one of the, man, I never remember what the I in IDE, as in development environment, and I always think it's independent. It's not, but in a language development environment, thank you, Scott, I see you typing away and researching it. They had one for Scratch 2, and that required Flash Player, so they got rid of that I development environment. And as with every kind of new patch and whatever, there's fixes, patches, and whatever. So Pulse Audio got fixed, a couple other bits. If you want to update it, real simple, sudo apt update, sudo apt full-upgrade, and then sudo apt dist, D-I-S-T, -upgrade. And when you do that last one, you're going to have to say yes 2 times in there. So you got to babysit it. If you've got a current version of the operating system, it'll happen really quick. So minutes.
Gotcha. So I've got integrated development environment.
Integrated, not nearly as dumb sounding as independent. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny because I added that glossary to my Security Plus glossary 15 minutes before our show started.
Nice.
Yeah, I have that right here.
It was in short-term cache memory.
Yep, very much so. Andre asks whether the discussion today, and I assume the discussion today, will apply to Linux Server in general, or only to the Raspberry Pi.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I understand the question correctly.
Yeah.
So let's find out as we get on if I haven't met what you have in mind, or if I haven't answered myself here accurately, follow up afterward. Won't be too long of a presentation, but it's going to be a good one. We got a lot of material to get through. I found an article. It just popped up today. I think it was written or published yesterday. And I want you to know where it is. This is one of those things. This is a tough one. Whether or not I should share it. I didn't even make a slide to share it. I'm going to bring it up in a tab, which I didn't even save. But let's talk about this thing for a second before I bring it up.
Okay.
You're learning a new language informally. Maybe, I don't know, I learned a bit of a new language in my freshman year in college because my roommate was from Singapore. So whenever you learn these new languages informally like that, you learn, first of all, a greeting, please, thank you, and then you learn the 7 dirty words in their language, things you should never say, or things that they want you to say just to get their friends to beat you up.
Right.
And there's a great Up in Smoke, the movie Up in Smoke reference that I encourage you to check out sometime that has one of those situations. Well, this is an article, the title of which is Commands You Should Never Run in Linux. And they are all potentially extremely destructive.
I like it.
Yeah, so give me a second here. You take over, and I'm going to bring that page up so they can see the URL and whatever. Okay, I did say. Oh, heck, I saved it. It's ready to go. I can share this.
Well, there we go. You didn't even need my filler, Dave.
Yeah, all right, let's share.
Because I was literally going through various things, and you're talking about learning a new language, and I found a super tiny Latin dictionary.
How cool.
From my grad school days.
If you're raised Catholic, you can already speak Latin by the time you're 6.
But there you go.
Okay, so up here, I think you should be able to see the URL, my browser bar. Come here, you. Right, so it's linuxtechlab.com, and I'll bet if you go there, they'll have an index of everything. The current article is Linux commands you should never run on your system, all separated by hyphens. And I just want to look at 1 or 2 of them with you. So this is an innocent sounding little command, makefs.xt4. Now what this part of the line does is it defines where you're going to make this new file system. If you pick the wrong one, you've basically overwritten your entire disk. You've formatted it.
Nice.
Never delete anything out of the etc or the boot directories, and especially don't delete those whole directories. That's pretty obvious. You wipe out its ability to boot. This is a really funky one. It implies something. You can use the find command to find files, kind of like doing a dir command in Windows, and then you follow it up with a command that says, now act on those files. This particular action says, execute the remove function. So this says, find all the files that have the extension .conf on the entire system and then delete them. So that would be a pretty bad idea to get rid of all the conf files. And the last one that I wanted to show you, you can read these and read their explanations. This one is just the bloody coolest command. This is a shirt, Tolowit. This thing is a command that goes in memory, and what it does is it replicates itself in memory to the point that it completely fills and destroys your memory, overrides the CPU, and can cause damage to your disk, can wipe out the disk. So at a minimum, as soon as you hit the enter key on this thing, your system is going to crash in short order. How long does it take? Function of how much memory you have and how fast your CPU is. But
What?
it's kind of like the little Bobby Tables thing.
Right. So Dave,
Yeah.
why would the developers of Linux do that? Why would they make a
Why do you make this something destructive? Well, because I'm going to presume there are valid uses for instance, creating a file system on a drive. I've just added a new flash drive and I want ext4 on it. It's like any other utility that's powerful, used without correct knowledge. If you were to put the wrong disk system in here, then you wiped out your real disk instead of the new disk.
Gotcha.
So, because you need powerful utilities, they can just be misused on purpose or on accident.
Right. So Kevin posted a precise question on this. Can any of these commands do actual hardware damage, or is this just nuking your operating system?
I don't know of any command that can do actual hardware damage.
Okay.
It's something that people have talked about for many, many years, and there are always people who claim that there is this thing. I have never actually seen one do damage. There's hardware that can do hardware damage. Somebody made about 2 years ago, this was kind of an all the rage thing, a thing that looked like a flash drive. Mm-hmm. And you plug it into a computer, and all that's in there is an uncharged capacitor. And so it just draws power from the USB port and charges up that capacitor. When you remove it, the capacitor discharges and arcs and destroys your USB port, or if you get lucky and it doesn't discharge and arc then, it's when you plug it into the next USB port and it blows it up.
Nice. That's epic.
I don't know why anybody made that.
There are definitely industrial malware things that can create hardware damage of systems, right? The Stuxnet attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities, things that can cause stuff to overheat by turning off the HVAC and right.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So so it's a secondary damage, but there isn't something that issues a command to this thing and says destroy yourself.
Right, exactly. No, we don't have to worry about the evil robot overlords.
Today is January 15th.
It is.
Yesterday was January 14th.
It was.
When the U.S. CISA, C-I-S-A, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issued a suggestion, request, demand, well, without any legal authority, that says, look, this is a group that works primarily for the U.S. federal government, but it's good advice, and this has been scooped all over the news, that says everybody's working at home right now, and so we don't have the secure systems that are maintained inside our federal facilities where we have IT departments protecting them and issuing demands and policies and procedures to keep computers and data safe. So people are have much greater exposure to their systems at home. So they recommend, are you ready? Deploy ad blocking software on all of your systems and standardize web browser usage across your workforce. That's a little tougher for us, but hello, Pi-hole, hello, whatever your favorite ad blocking extensions are. Because they don't just block ads, they have lists that also block malware and attacks and things like that.
Cool.
I thought that was very cool. All right, that's all the tricks and trips and traps. My next thing in Uncle Notes is starting the project. How we doing here? 43. So let me catch up on questions with you. And then we'll start up talking about DNS and DNS servers.
Sounds good.
I have hyper scrolled everywhere. All right, I'm just going to pick some random start point here and just do a little cruising down. I'm at 223. Keyboard open and covers the latest chat message joining on my phone these days. That's part of a conversation that I would be curious about, but I'm not going to go back and find out.
Right.
I'll have an answer, but it's the one you want. Okay, that's when I refreshed. Putty isn't gooey enough. God, are you hanging out with Tullow at Elbow?
Elbow already left
for that one. That was at 226.
Yeah, he had to bail. He was just here
Okay.
briefly for lunch, so.
Sorry, he'll watch it on archive. How many times did everyone make the Audacity jokes last week? He's not here, but only once that I recall, and it was from Big Shock, Tullowit.
So
yeah,
we've got a couple of questions. One that just came in from Alice, who's
Alice is here. Big round of applause.
Awesome. And the question is about mobile deployment in the enterprise, and it's Kobo versus Cope.
Okay, so
corporate owned, business only.
Personally enabled. Yeah, okay. Business. What's the O in business? Company owned, business
only.
Only. Okay, there we go. And personally enabled.
Right.
So I like. Go ahead, Scott. You're fresh on this stuff. You've been doing a lot.
I'm totally fresh on this, having just updated the glossary in my Security Plus book with these specific terms. So the Kobo, both of them are do the same thing. Corporate owned means the corporation, and we're talking about mobile device deployment to employees. In other words, I'm issuing you a smartphone or a tablet or some combination thereof, right? And I'm the corporation. So the corporation owns the device, issues it to the employee, and the big difference between Kobo and Cope is that the Kobo, the corporation maintains and continues to control everything that's on that device, right? With Cope, the organization, the enterprise, provides a certain set of apps that the employee can choose to customize his or her device to do their job more efficiently. So Cope has a little more flexibility on the employee side. Kobo is rigidly controlled from the centralized enterprise security.
And that control, that can either be a technical control or policy. Here, we're issuing you this phone, and right. You are only allowed to use it to call customers.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
And this, the flip side of all that is BYOD, right? Where you bring your own device and you have to abide by company rules and stuff, but it's your device as the employee. You bought it, you break it, you pay for it. Right? So many ways.
Stole my leading question right out of my mouth.
Awesome.
Nice. Thanks, Scott.
You betcha.
So Kevin's got a lot going on here. What is this? Role playing? I'm a dwarf fighter.
Well, because Andre,
I'm a dwarf fighter, but I fight dwarves.
I asked what RP meant in Andre's question. He goes, Raspberry Pi, duh. And so other people just started riffing on it. And
all the other possibilities for RP.
Yep. It's all good.
That's what I would have done. So, take care. Okay. And we left Elbow. So, yeah, Elbow's got that new job, but he's still able to break for lunch. Now it's the opposite. Now he comes here for lunch instead of bail for lunch.
It's all good. We either get him or don't, Yep. So that was it as far as substantive questions. Okay. Kevin asked whether the U.S. power grid is accessible via the internet. In other words, are we at risk, I assume?
Yeah. We would tell you, because Scott and I are intimately connected to that industry and to the defense thereof, but we'd have to kill you if we told you what we knew. Sorry. I'm guessing that it's as accessible as any secure thing. So obviously they do a lot of effort, presumably they do a lot of effort to protect it from unauthorized access from the outside.
Right.
And, to date, while there have been a lot of really large computer system break-ins on both the corporate world and the government world, if there's anything ever happened as far as access to the power grid, it's not been made public.
Right. So Alex has a question that just came in, and it specifically references DNS, tree structures. So to which I say, Alex, hold that thought, because Dave is about to launch into an entire explanation of DNS, how it works and why and all that stuff.
Okay, so I guess that's my segue. We're finishing off
Absolutely.
at 249.
Yep.
This is a class, guys. We're doing a class on DNS. I don't know if you saw Mike's Wednesday show. He really surprised me. He did a presentation on building your dream machine, and I kind of had this envision that it would be 30, 40 minutes and he'd be done with it. And he got so wrapped up in two of his topics that he had to extend it into day 2. And that's kind of what happened with me here. As I was looking at these foundations, I realized this is going to be a little lengthy. And so when you get bored, we'll stop, we'll answer questions. And if you get really bored, we'll stop and carry it over to another day, or say, to heck with it, let's just go do something fun next week, because I don't have all my ducks in a row.
Right.
All right, DNS. So let's go a little bit into the past before DNS and why we have DNS. So the internet was invented, as we all know, by a vice president, Al Gore. Well, he said so I'm all right. And the problem was, or the goal here was to create a robust set of connected remote sites. The purpose we don't care about, but we wanted to accomplish that. And it was never envisioned in its early development days to become the internet of today with hundreds of millions of users. It was envisioned to be used by a number of facilities where the user count might bump into the 10,000s. And so in those earliest days, they said, look, we're going to add a box at this facility, and it's got to have an identifier. And we'll say for now that identifier is an IP address. It was, but not in the format that we know of today. Well, when there was 10 people working together and the first 10 IP addresses were 1.1.1.1 through 1.1.1.9 or 10, that's pretty easy to remember. Oh yeah, Jerry was the first one here, so he's .1, and Lisa was his development partner, so she's .2. But after it got beyond 10 people, it became difficult to memorize who people were by their IP address. So they created a system that was a text file. Every user had a text file on their computer, and in that text file was a line for every other user of this new developing network tool. The name of the file was, and it still exists today, is called hosts. No extension, it's pure text. And you put a line in there that's got the IP address of some computer, some host, and then you put a space after it, and then you put a name. You can put any name after it you want. In fact, you can put multiple names because only your computer cares about it. So somebody might do my IP address and have the name Dave, and somebody else might do my IP address and call it Daver, and somebody else might say, okay, I'll refer to him as Dave and Goofball. And you could do bunches of entries like that. So, okay, that was kind of cool when there was 20 people. But then there were 30, and then there were 40, and then there were 100. Well, how do I update that every day? So somebody said, I'll tell you what, we'll have a master database. There will be a master hosts file every time we add a new computer to this experimental development. The adder will submit a form that says, here's the new host we've added, here's the operator of it, the preferred name, and here's the IP address. So whenever you fired up your computer at the beginning of the day, it would call out to the network and download the host file of the day. Excuse me. So, okay, that's good until you get to about 10,000, and you don't know all these people, and so the whole thing had two problems. One, there was no organizational structure for the resources being added in. Over at the lab in Palo Alto, we added a server that was focused on sending messages. It was called Message Server in Palo Alto. Meanwhile, in San Diego, somebody built another server that held a database. But again, just no organizational structure. So if you wanted to access this database, you had to know that it existed and know its name and know its IP address. And again, they were developing, not we, I wasn't there. I was in diapers, I hope. Al Gore was changing them for me, though, so it was cool. Sorry. So they were adding so many new devices daily that we couldn't keep up with manually updating of the master database table. So somebody put the brakes on the whole system and said, we've got to solve both of these problems, and we think we can do that with a single protocol. We'll, first of all, create an organizational structure. And we'll let our various organizations and agencies and participants find themselves a home in there. And they, of course, got together in committees and developed an organizational structure and a way to refer to it. That organizational structure we know today as an upside-down tree structure. I'll bring up a slide in a minute and talk a little bit about that. And then the other cool thing they came up with was an automated fashion for tracking IP addresses against the names of the resources in this tree structure. And along the way, the thing that kind of binds them together is how we refer to hosts within the tree structure. So let me bring that up. Hey, that's got the right page already laid out and ready to rock.
Oh yeah, organization.
It's like I knew this was coming. All right, so I was up late last night and I didn't want to make my own slides. I have stolen slides from all over the place. If you copyright some slide that I show up here and you call me, I'll edit it out. But otherwise, I thank you. It was such a quick project, I didn't get to give notification of where everything came from. So this is a very common one. Like all trees, there is a root, a single point from which everything develops. And we do it like you would recognize a file system today. That's an upside down tree structure. And I don't know which chicken or egg came first, but here's what we came up with. Well, the first two groups that were developing this structure were, first of all, the U.S. military. They were the ones who wanted a robust network in case some site went down for whatever reason. They wanted to have the ability for the other sites to be able to interconnect and maybe even bypass that thing. So they created a branch that's not on here called .mil. And the other group that was in here at the time was some educational institutions that were helping do the research and provide labs and develop and all those other aspects of it. It was done on a contract basis. And so we had an edu branch in there. Actually, edu came later. This was the group funding it. It's part of military. It's ARPA, the Advanced Projects Agency. Thank you. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It was actually DARPA back then. And then that became ARPA. They got rid of defense on here. So we've got MIL and ARPA developing this structure. Edu was in because they had 3 different universities that were participating. And cool, we had this 3-level or 3 domains in the initial internet. Well, the civilian government said, we want to play, so they got a domain. Now, when you've got the U.S. military and the U.S. government and the U.S. education system collected together as one group, what you have is a gigantic marketplace. And so commercial entities said, we want to play in this realm. So, okay, we got the COM extension. And then we got this group that said, hey, wait a minute, we have resources that we can provide, and you have resources that we would like to access. We want to play. So nonprofits and things like that got to participate. They got the .NET group. And then there was everybody else who didn't quite fit into those realms. And so they made a blanket organization called .org. And those are, not all up here, but those were the first 6 what they call top-level domains. The next thing that happened was our international partners said, we want to play too. So France participated, or they petitioned. And we said, okay, but they surrendered and said, no, we're just kidding. 306 countries wanted to get involved. So 306 new top-level domains were added. That's a legitimate number. That's how many there really were. And, of course, now there's more and more and more and more and more. Well, each domain can have one or more tiers. We all know this. So if you're working for a company right now, let's say Scott and I, we work for TotalSem. And TotalSem lives under .com, which lives under the root. Now, what do we have here in TotalSem? This says Cisco. I'm going to pretend it's TotalSem. We might have a web server that doesn't have to be at our site. It can just be organized into our domain. And web servers have names, and their names are almost always, but not always, www. They certainly were in the days when the World Wide Web was being developed. But maybe we built a corporate server, and we also built a lab server that we don't make public knowledge of. So we could have www1 or research or any other name that makes us happy. We could also add, if we so chose, more subdomains. So down here under org, here's some organizations, and underneath those, these look like individual computers. Now here we go, this is a better one. So here's an organization that has lots of subdomains, and each of them has resources within them. So we've got US, we got the state of Texas. It's actually state.tex. And there's a server in state.tex.us called www. But there's some other sub-organizations. The Department of Transportation, I have no idea what the TPWD is. This is our Department of Public Safety. This is what everybody else calls, heck, I can't even remember. I've been in Texas so long now.
The cops.
DMV. Department of Motor Vehicles, state cops, things like that. And so within those, they can have servers. So you can get many levels deep. How deep can you get? Deep enough that if you were to type in a bottom to top complete path up to the top level domain, starting with, let's say, www.txdps.state.tx.us, as long as that label doesn't exceed 255 characters, you're good to go. So if you've got to have lots of depth to your structure for some reason, keep your domains and subdomain labels short. So this is our upside down tree-like structure. When we define a full bottom to top path description of a resource, excuse me, I didn't want to chew on the ice, we call that a fully qualified domain name, or FQDN. There's also partially qualified domain names, but nobody knows or cares about them, so it doesn't matter. So the FQDN of this particular file transfer protocol server is ftp.tx.dps.state.tx.us. Okay, why is it called that? Where does that come from? Well, that comes from DNS servers. DNS servers, we're going to find out shortly. Let me get out of here. Come in all kinds of different flavors. And one of them is a function, a beast called a name server. That's the one that says, I'm going to log the name of this server and its FQDN and its IP address. Name servers are not what gives systems names, but what they log names. The job of DNS is to make it easy for our computer to learn an IP address. Because here's what it all boils down to. If you take nothing away from this presentation today, take this one little factoid away. Nothing leaves your computer unless it's got a destination IP address and a source IP address in it. Okay, yeah, there's tiny funky little exceptions, but for real things that we do every day, when you go to a web server, www.google.com, your computer says, I don't know what that means. And it has to stop. And it says, I'm supposed to figure out, or somebody is on my behalf, the IP address of www.google.com. Otherwise, I can't create an IP packet header, and therefore it can't leave my computer. So it is the job of DNS to go find that for us. Now, we've got all kinds of DNS servers that are going to help us in that. The one that defines our upside down tree structure, those are name servers. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, so let me throw out a question then.
Please.
Alice, get that question.
Copy and paste
organize
into
resources
future
into a
research.
tree-like structure, right?
Okay.
So that should note that we're looking at it. We mainly look at it from the bottom down, so kind of a reverse tree. Therefore, tree-like, not just tree. So.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, what does this mean? DNS organizes research in a tree-like structure. Right, so they're not, now, when we say organize, that's one of the things that's even a little bit tricky. It has nothing to do with physical location. It has to do with categorization. So Total SEM is based here in Houston. I got to do an update on that page, but you won't change. Cisco is based in California, and Foxconn is based in China, and so forth. We don't care what your geographical location of your system is. You can be placed in any domain in the DNS system, the domain name system.
Right.
So, and that's really kind of cool, because that means even though Total Seminars is in Houston, Texas, and our web server is, I have no idea where our web server is. It's somewhere in some company's warehouse, data warehouse or web hosting warehouse, that let's say is in Iowa, and the DNS server that controls it could very well be in Tallahassee. Doesn't matter. Electronically, as long as they can all communicate with each other, they can understand what pieces of the upside down tree-like structure they exist in. You have that look on your face, Scott, that says, question, add. You have a look.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
I was the look on my face was Michael and I had this conversation about where the specific AWS server farm is that hosts our server.
Okay.
It was kind of one of those, do I actually know the answer to that question?
Right. And they build server farms all the time. They just, last year or the year before, they built a huge one. I don't think Montana's right, but somewhere in the great upper Midwest, great Northwest.
Yeah.
And these servers, let's off track for 14 seconds. These server farms are gigantic collections of huge, powerful computers that need tons of electricity and generate tons of heat. And so they are building them in places that are cool. Sometimes they're building them near cold bodies of water so they can pump cold water and do cold water cooling in their environments and HVACs, if not on the direct machines. So it's, and of course they want to build places where they can do eco-friendly electricity generation, and
right.
It's a huge world.
Yep.
Okay, so nothing leaves your computer unless it's got a correctly formatted IP packet. It's got a destination IP address at the front, followed by a source IP address. And of course your computer already knows its own, so that's never a big deal. But when we put in a friendly name, that's what we used to call these things before we called them domain names or FQDNs, your computer stops and it says, I've got to contact a server that can help me find this. So that leads us to the next slide.
Okay.
It does. Hey, there's one. Okay. Let's do them in this order.
The momentary pregnant pause here.
That's right. Will it work? Will it share?
There we go.
Okay. So what we have here is a DNS server whose job it is to go out and learn the IP address on behalf of a requesting host. So we don't have one drawn here, but here where I'm circling, there's a host that says, I need the IP address of www.google.com. Hey, there we go.
So yeah, the guy looking at it.
So this is the host.
Yeah.
So he goes out to a what's called a resolving server or a recursive server. And the recursive server says, first of all, I'm going to check. If I have a cache memory in here, I'll check and see if I have that address cached up. But if not, I'm going to have to go and learn it. And he says, you've provided me with a FQDN, www.google.com. So I'm going to work in reverse order. I'm going to go, first of all, find a server called com. Now, DNS servers, they may or may not know about friendly names depending on what their job is. But this thing does know the IP address of a root server. There are a bunch of root servers. They're all the same. They're all duplicated, and they're all over the world. In fact, there are 13 root servers. There are exactly 13 root servers, but they are duplicated in 120 different countries. So he says, I know the address of all of them, and because of some magic algorithm, I know of one that's close to me. So I'm going to call up that server and say, hey, I need the IP address of the .com server. And so he says, well, let me give that to you. .com might be available in this example at 1.1.1.1. Okay, good. Now I'm going to go contact him and say, hey, do you know the IP address of Google, which is supposed to be under your purview? Yes, you can find Google at 2.2.2.2. And then he calls a DNS server at Google and says, do you have a record for a computer called www in your domain? Yes, I do. In this example, it's 3333. So that goes back to this recursive searching server, and he reports it to the host, and the host says, oh, good, I finally learned that the Google web server address is 3333. Now I can create an IP packet and send it out to, well, if this is a Soho router, it's not. There's got to be a Soho router or some other router that lives here, and then he can send the packet out, and then it gets delivered accordingly. So that's the job of one of the kinds of servers, in fact, two of them. We've got a recursive server. It's his job to do the research. And most recursive servers also have cache memory in here. When they learn a new address and a new mapping, a new translation, they'll save that in that cache for a certain amount of time. All right, I just accidentally clicked a bad button. Am I back okay?
You are. You were
I love that stuff.
live and in charge, man.
There was a funky share button. All right, cool. So let's move on then.
Okay. And y'all aren't usually shy, but if you're feeling shy, if you have questions as Dave is talking about stuff, go ahead and ask them. I'll see them and be able to query him in real time as well. So don't be shy.
Very good. All right, so I went through a whole bunch of pages of this, checking the notes, because we've seen what happened when Dave ignores his notes and something critical gets missed.
No, Dave, don't type up. No. Oh.
Now let me show you a different slide. Just want to add a little tiny piece into this thing. All right, this is pretty much the same thing, but it's got this one other piece to it. Share, click, share, that guy. It's a little faint, but here it is. So here's the same thing as we saw before. This is the host who's gone out and talked to a DNS resolver and learned the IP address of some site called example.com. Now, once he learns it, as I was kind of creating with sock puppets on the last slide, he says, okay, great. Now that I've learned your IP address or the IP address that I need, I don't need your services anymore. I will now go out and communicate directly with some outbound router, and he will go out and find through routing where that example.com is and get me in touch with it. That's the same thing displayed a little bit differently. Here's the root server map. So all of the root servers live in the United States. The U.S. invented the internet. It has contracted control in some areas. It has ceded control in some areas. But in one grand stroke, they said, we are not letting loose of the real original root servers. Now, as I get into this map, let me tell you something about root servers and name servers and TLD servers. A name server is a server whose job it is to hold a database of a host's name and its IP address. If your DNS name server, if a DNS name server is part of the internet domain name system, it has to follow certain rules. If you want to build a DNS server at your house, throw the rules out the window. But when you have a real DNS server that participates with the domain name service on the internet, it's got rules that it has to obey. And one of the rules is you have to have two. One is called a primary, or in old terms, a master. You'll see it's still called that. And the other, or others, you can have more than one, are secondaries. Think of them as mirrors of the database. And those mirrors exist because obviously I can put mirrors in different locations and make them quicker access for a lot of people. So there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of secondary .com name servers. So those levels that we saw at the top, the 6 originals and then the 306 new countries and then all the other new domains, each of them has a master server. And those are all called top level domains. And the DNS server that handles each domain is a TLD server or a TLD name server, with each having one or more secondary servers. So there's 13, as I mentioned, root servers. And all they do is track all of the TLDs. And then there are mirrors of them all over the place. Each one of these, I didn't count them all. I'm taking it on faith from the site that I took it from, that there's 120 of these. Or well, actually, there's not 120. They are in 120 countries. There may be many secondaries in each of those countries. I'll bet you there's not many in Iceland. But I could be wrong. That's not Fiji. Seychelles? Yeah, whatever. Sorry, Hawaii. You don't get any Tuluit. All right, so we got name servers. We got a root name server. We have the TLD name servers. And then every other subdomain has either a name server for everything in that domain, or sometimes there's even domain servers that are collections of subdomains. So maybe one TLD server under COM manages Total Seminars and HP and Cisco and Sahara Pools and however many other subdomains that its capacity can take care of. Done with that. So every time I do that, I've got to do a refresh on my YouTube page, because otherwise it gets 7 minutes behind. It's a really funky thing. Even if I wasn't gone for 7 minutes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. All right. So went through all that process, went through that process, did that. Host knows the IP address. Off we go. Show root server locations image. Hey, I'm reading, all right? I could read like Mike and do silently, and we could just have dead air. Okay, so we talked about root servers. We talked about name servers and TLD servers. TLD servers and root servers are special case name servers. Name servers are much broader in scope. Now, a name server has two elements in it, two kinds of elements. One is called, well, they're both called lookup zones. One is a forward lookup zone, and the other is a reverse lookup zone. And I think Alice asked Mike about this either 1 or 2 AMAs ago, but not everybody here was there for that. So a forward lookup zone is a database, a list of names and IP addresses that's designed to answer name questions. So when a host says, what is the IP address of google.com, google.com is a name, so he can do that forward lookup and say, okay, I'll look up the IP address, or if I don't have it, I'll go out and do a recursive search for it if I have that capability. So that's a forward lookup zone. You don't know the IP address, it will find out for you or give it to you. The
Right.
reverse lookup zone is exactly what it sounds like. You know the IP address, you want to know the name, the friendly name, the FQDN. So, and it's two different sections that have to be filled in by either some manual process or by some automatic process.
Makes sense.
So then another kind of server is a resolving server or a recursive server. That's what we just saw. Recursive or resolving server does the same thing. It says, somebody asked me a question that's a forward lookup question or a reverse lookup question, and I will go out and make all the appropriate phone calls to all the appropriate servers
Right.
until I find what you're looking for. It resolves against a DNS name or vice versa, a DNS name against an IP address.
Gotcha.
Okay, 2 servers. All right, so I got a server, and it's a primary DNS server. Well, not give to one or more of
So our video is hanging, and you are completely off the air at this point. Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on with Dave. I assume I'm still live. So, oh, wow. Okay. Not only am I live, I'm live and all by myself. Hopefully Dave will be popping back in here to complete his DNS discussion. In the meantime, I can answer questions. I can do a song and dance. I can wait till Dave Rush reappears on screen, or just his chair, the empty chair. This is a very ominous moment in Total Seminars history. With Dave is not in his chair. Not quite sure what's going on. Sing for you. Oh yeah, I'll sing for you. Yeah, not sure what's going on with Dave, but we'll go. Dave just texted me. Andre, I have a great singing voice. I'm the lead singer in multiple bands and have been for 30 years. So there you go. Well, not the same bands, but that's what I do. That's my superpower. Aside from answering questions.
Okay, that looks like back. That was my my lost lease thing. I'm going to solve that problem this week by switching to static addresses, and that'll go away.
Okay.
Thought about it this week, didn't do it. So, okay. We look like we are back.
Yeah, I was just about to break into song. So, you know, your time.
It would have been one of the best shows we've ever done. All right. So, a primary DNS server or a secondary DNS server is actually one of the zones, one or more of the zones that's in there. So let's say I've got a forward lookup zone and I want it to be what we call authoritative. So I'm going to make him a primary. Now in that same server, I can set up 50, 100, 1,000 other zones. I can do more primary forward lookup zones, and I can make them primaries, or they can be secondaries of some other computer that's got a primary. So that's really kind of cool. You can take a DNS server and put tons of lookup zones in them and coordinate them with other servers to be either primaries or secondaries. Heavy magic. And we're not, when we build our server, not going to get nearly into that kind of depth.
Okay. Sounds cool.
Yeah. Since you have a primary and since you have a secondary, that's mandatory. Whenever a change is made to the primary, we've added a new host, we've lost a new host, a host has changed its IP address, a host has changed its name. Well, that has to be communicated to its secondaries. So there is a communications link between primary and secondary servers.
Right.
Used to be, back in the good old days, we would just do a little database transfer. But it's the 21st century and even late into the 20th century, this became a vulnerability. DNS servers are just as subject to a variety of attacks as any other kind of server out there in the world. So they've developed fixes for that. Sorry, it's because I leaned back. Check, check, check. I'll put spikes in the back of my chair. You'll never lean back again. So what happens now is we establish a secure connection between primaries and secondaries, and this will prevent attacks like a man in the middle. Now, why would a man in the middle, what kind of attack could they do to me? Well, the worst one would be, let's say that a primary is sending a change to a secondary, and there's a man in the middle intercepting that change and sending instead its own change. Hey, Google changed its IP address from 8.8.8.8 to 8.8.8.9. So this guy grabs it and says, change of address. Google is now 16.16.16.32, which could very well be a horrible site that's illegal, immoral, unethical, or fattening. I don't know. So we're going to stop those MIM attacks and other kinds of attacks by establishing secure connections between primaries and secondaries. And all the major name DNS servers support a number of different protocols, and I'll look at those ever so briefly, just in a short list, a little bit later. So modern name servers, there's secure connections, and that's true between, okay, now there's another kind of server called a forwarding server. We looked at a recursive server, and the job of a recursive is to do all the research itself and find out an IP address on behalf of a requesting host. A forwarding DNS server says, all I do is accept DNS search requests, either one for a forward lookup zone or one for a reverse lookup zone, and I send that to a recursive DNS server. So if you get in the States a connection from your ISP and they provide a box, a router, or you go out and you buy a third-party router, a Motorola Surfboard or an Asus router or whatever, the ISP is going to send down to that box, whenever it turns on, some information via DHCP. Here's your default gateway, here's your IP address, here is your subnet mask, and here is one or two preferred DNS servers. So I use Comcast. It sends me down two addresses. It says, when in doubt, you should use either 75757575 or the address of the other one that I don't bother to memorize. And then on the LAN side of the router, there is a forwarding DNS server. Whenever any computer in my system needs DNS, first of all, when he gets a DHCP assignment to the LAN side, it's going to say, your DNS server is the IP address of your Soho router. So, okay, I'll send a DNS request to the IP address of my Soho router, and I'll follow it up with the DNS port number, 53. And that will go into the forwarding DNS server, and the forwarding DNS server says, oh, okay, I'm supposed to send this to Comcast's recursive recursive DNS server. Does that make sense? Don't you dare do that. My computer says it wants to do a restart now. No! That'll take a little longer to recover.
Timing is everything.
Okay, so forwarding DNS servers, they don't have any cached information. They don't have the ability to go out and research information for you. They simply say, I will accept that request and pass it on to a recursive DNS server on your behalf.
Okay.
A bunch of us have them. Of course, you've all got them in your ISP-provided Soho router, but if you built a Pi-hole, that's a forwarding DNS server that has one other feature in there. It's got a filter. It says, I'll look at the DNS addresses that you want researched, and I'm going to compare them against a go, no-go list. If there's a no-go list, if that's on the no-go list, I won't send that up to the ISP's recursive server or to some other server that you configured me for. I'm just going to evaporate it. It never happened. I never got that request. And if it's not on the no-go list, it's on the okay list, then I'll send that to an appropriate recursive server. So cool.
Yeah.
That leads us then to the fact that we've got 3 kinds of servers in a different category. Local, a DNS server that you built in your own LAN side of the network. It's not integrated with the DNS system, so you can do any of these kinds you want. You can make a recursive, you can make a forwarding, you can make a caching. You probably can't make a root unless you're building your own in-house lab, and same for a TLD, but
Sure.
you can make a name server. So any of those, all local, and the rules all go out the window. Do whatever you want with it. That's what we'll do next week.
Okay.
Excuse me. There are private DNS servers. They tend to be recursive and caching, and those are ones usually that are run by your ISP, so they're only available to, in the case of 75, a subscriber to Comcast,
Okay.
or whatever the case may be. And then there's public ones.
Okay.
You got to like them public ones. There used to be 1 or 2 of them that we all know and used and loved. Google's pair of public servers. You can go to your machine and say, I know that Comcast and my DHCP server have said use this DNS server. Nah, I'm just going to skip all that. I'm going to go into my workstation configuration and say my primary DNS server is 8.8.8.8, Google's primary DNS name server. And my secondary is going to be 8.8.4.4, Google's secondary. So in fact, what I do at the office is I use Google as my primary, and if it should ever go down, then I use whatever address is provided by my ISP. And we use Comcast down at the office, so it's the
Right.
475s. All right, so you can have a private DNS server in your LAN side. You can have, a local. You can have a private, only members allowed, and you can have public. So
Okay.
let me show you something.
good.
It's cool as all get out.
All right.
31, we're not far from the end here. I'll do another 15 minutes and
Yeah,
finish
no
this up if I don't get any further than that at the end. Okay, this web page. Oh, I did slides of these. I can do them on here. Yeah, there it is.
This is where Dave goes off script and tries.
Nope, I did slides. My script says use slides. I almost went off script. All right, so those of you who have Pi-hole may recognize this if you haven't played with it. When you set up your Pi-hole, you got to tell it, hey, when I'm a forwarder. So when somebody sends me a request, where should I forward it to? And you have 2 sets of choices. One of them is this list. I want to send it to the primary.
And I think we just lost Dave again. And in the middle of his slide, no less. This should be interesting, because I'm not sure where he was going with this. Otherwise, I'd chime in and talk about the screen that we're looking at, that without my glasses, I can't actually see. So there you go. The undertow took him away. That could very much well be. All right, let's see what's going on here. Upstream DNS servers. He's looking at his Raspberry Pi. And Dave is definitely not on this planet anymore. So there we go. Yes, the Dave hole has taken Dave offline. So, what shall we talk about now? Because, yeah, this is definitely Free for All Friday, because I can answer your questions. And that's Dave texting me again saying, again. So he should be back momentarily as well. So while we're looking at next Friday, Dave is going to, assuming he is still with us on the planet, is going to go through more specifically how to set up DNS within a Raspberry Pi environment and in your home environment, including perhaps reprising on the Pi-hole as well. So, hi, welcome back, Dave.
It did it again. I've never seen it do twice in a day, so I apologize for that.
No worries.
That's just poor. All right, back to business. I know the signal chain problem, Michael. What are you doing to me? Don't take anything. My wife was about to disconnect a piece of equipment from my laptop and use it for herself. Now is not the good time.
Oh, come on, do it.
Do it. Go on, do it.
What could go wrong?
So we've got local DNS servers, we've got private, we have public, and we were looking at the how we're going to forward our Pi hole. So a request comes in, we can either forward it to one of these public ones, or if you're going to build a private one in your own home next week, then you won't pick from this list. You'll go down to the next part of the page as you scroll down. Oh gosh,
Are you
am I streaming, Scott?
You are absolutely live.
Wow.
Just we're at double headshots right now.
Okay.
So if you want to show your Pi hole page,
yeah, got to go back and share that again, huh?
Yep. You will need to do that. And Alex says, if you really don't want to be here, you should just tell us.
You can't imagine how much joy I get out of being here. All right. So I'm going to build a custom local one. So I won't select from this list of public servers. I will simply go down to the next part of the menu and put in, I would like to use this custom server, and it'll be the IP address of the server that I've created. And I can do multiples in there. One per pair for IPv4s, pair for IPv6s. And Pi-hole has the ability to establish a secure connection between its resolution, its recursive server. I can tell it to use Dns Sec. So this says whenever passing requests or responses back and forth between the client and me, or me and my recursive server choice, then we can do DNS security. Cool. All right, that's all the slides. If slides were causing, now Scott's gone. Am I gone? No, I'm still there. All right, moving on then. We'll see what happens and if Scott makes it back. I wonder if we have a problem with Zoom. Maybe it's not me. So we've looked at a bunch of different server types. We've looked at top-level domain servers. We've looked at root servers. We've looked at general name servers. We've got forwarding servers. We've got recursive servers. We have caching servers. And many of the common server products that exist out there, sorry, I'm watching all kinds of back things happen as everybody tries to reconnect and disconnect, can perform multiple tasks like those. All right, caching servers, recursives. So let me take this back into an A+ issue that comes up. Let's say that Google at 8.8.8.8, now that's their DNS server, but we'll pretend that it's a web server, has changed his IP address today. Now there's probably a server out there that says I can automatically pick that change up and update it into DNS. In fact, there are servers out there that can do that, and I'm going to talk about those in a few moments. But even if that does happen, it takes a while for that change to propagate. So it maybe goes to a secondary, the secondary calls up the primary says, oh, okay, I got to send that all down through all my different secondaries, and it takes a little while. Meantime, whenever you make a connection to a network service like a web server, your computer will cache up the name and the IP address. So next time you go to it, he doesn't have to call a forwarding server or a recursive server. He says, oh, okay, I know that Google is 8.8.8.8. So Google has just changed its IP address because they had a catastrophe and they're bringing on backup systems and whatever. So you type in www.google.com. Your system says, okay, I'll replace that with information that I have in my cache, 8.8.8.8, builds an IP header and sends it out, and you get nothing because there is no server right now at 8.8.8.8. They changed their name, they changed everything. So here's what you've got to do. If you can't wait, because we don't know how long it's going to take for those changes to propagate all through DNS, I've seen this happen on occasion where it takes about a day, and I've seen it happen where it takes minutes. Then you go into your handy dandy little command prompt. Let me open one up. This will be fun. And I think it's safe for me to do, but I'm not going to hit the enter key just in case. Sharing a command prompt with you. There it is. So you might see a question, something like this. I can't talk about real questions on a CompTIA exam, but it might be along the lines of the example that I have. You've gone to a website all day, works fine, and now when you try to go there, you can't get to it. You've checked out all of your network configurations and all the hardware and all the software works. So what are you going to do to fix this? Well, if you take Dave's example and say, I think it's because Google changed its IP address, then you can go into your command prompt and type in ipconfig space / and this is all one word, flush DNS. And what that does is causes your Windows machine's IP address cache to zero out. So now the next time you go to, browse to, for instance, www, let's do this, ping www.google.com. He looks in cache. Cache has no entry for google.com, so he's going to do a stop. He's called up my Pi hole. My Pi hole is called a recursive server. In fact, my Pi hole probably had it cached up and got the address there already. And we can see it's 172.217.12.68. That's magic stuff going on. One other thing about name servers. Name servers are filled with database entries. It's got a host name, either a local host name or a full FQDN name, and an IP address. Now, how does that information get in there? Well, there's basically two ways. One, some human puts it in. We call these records. There are A records and PTR records and quad A records and MX records and things like that. And you need some kind of editor or some kind of command line and put those information into the forward lookup zones and into the reverse lookup zones. Ugh, what a pain, but might be necessary, because the only other way is if you have a DNS server and a DHCP server, almost the only other way, that work in Congress with one another. The DHCP server says, I got a DHCP request from a computer called Davar, and I gave him the IP address of 10.11.12.13. And then I work in Congress with some specific kind of DNS server, and I will send that information to the DNS server, and it will automatically update its records. You're going to find those in a couple of different places. The one most common one that you may encounter is a Windows Server setup. When you set up DHCP and, hey, Scott's coming back, and a DNS server, then they will work together and coordinate. I see you. You're looking good, Scott. Let me see if you're on the screen.
Wow, man.
Hey.
Yeah,
we've all got it, huh?
Yeah, my internet, my beautiful fiber internet just went down completely. So I'm connecting via my cell phone. How about that?
Maybe the problem is actually a Comcast-wide problem. It might not have been me.
I'm on AT&T, so who knows?
Oh, well, then that's not the problem. It could be a worldwide network problem.
This could be it. This could be the end of the world as we know it. I cannot actually look at the live stream chat, right, from my phone. So if you guys are asking questions, I can't answer them.
All right. Well, I've gotten about as far as I want to get today. There's a little bit more to talk about next week.
Okay.
We were just talking about reasons to use the ipconfig /flush DNS flag.
Okay.
So when your computer has cached up an IP address for a resource out there that's got a domain name, but that resource changed its IP address, you're not going to be able to get to it until you flush your DNS cache, and that will force your computer to call a forwarding DNS server or a recursive name server.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let me look. There's not much left in the notes. Maybe I can do this in about 5 minutes, and then we answer questions for 10 minutes and close down.
or we get closed down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if we get shut down again, I'm not coming back. We'll
So before I got unceremoniously dumped off the internet, I was talking about what you're going to talk about next Friday. So
okay. So next
not
Friday,
quite
we're going to do this. We're going to, in fact,
There
that
we go.
takes me exactly into my next spot of our notes.
Okay.
So in
Sounds
the
good.
Linux world, there are 4 DNS products. The old one that is fallen out of favor right now was called Bind, the Berkeley
right.
Internet Network Domain, something like that. They're currently on version 9, and it's a nice recursive and name server router. So that's a really cool thing about it, and it also caches. It works with the various security protocols when it comes to exchanging information. It supports IPv4 and it supports IPv6. Let me list the other 3, and then I'm going to run through some features of them real quick. The big one of choice right now, if you're going to just install a new one on a Linux box, and that's probably what we're going to do next week, is Unbound. Bind was all bound up, right, because it's Bind. So the improved, better, cooler thing is Unbound, and it does everything that Bind does. So it's recursive, and it's caching, and it can forward, and it's transparent, and it's got all kinds of other cool features. It's secure.
So let me guess what the next one is.
Please.
Boundless?
It certainly should be. It's a mid-age one. It falls in between Bind and Unbound. It's called DNS Mask with a Q. Again, that one's got one limitation. It either forwards or it's a name server, but it doesn't do both. It's recursive or it names and caches. And then there's another one that gets a lot of good write-up. I haven't experimented with it. All one word, Power DNS.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So we talked about forward lookup zones and reverse lookup zones. We mentioned some record types while you were offline.
Okay.
DNS servers can manage multiple zones of either type, can make them primaries or secondaries. I talked about if you're using DHCP, a standalone DHCP system and a standalone DNS server don't coordinate. There's no hand-in-hand effort there that says, hey, I'm a DNS server. Here's some information that you can auto-update. You have to have an integrated system. And that's one of the nice things that Unbound does. It has a built-in DHCP server and DNS server. So whenever it hands out a DHCP assignment, it automatically updates the records in the DNS server. Just like in a Windows server setup with its DHCP server and its DNS server.
All right, cool.
Statics, working with, okay, I even did that. All right, the only other thing I got to do here is a couple of interesting terms, and I think I've covered everything that I want to more than the level that you need to know. DNS Sec, I already mentioned that. DNS security, that is an older protocol that allows 2 DNS boxes to securely transfer data. So are these next 2 things, DOH and DOT. DOH is DNS over HTTPS. So again, we can use HTTPS, Diffie-Hellman exchange protocols, or DOT, DNS over TLS. We can do that with full certificates and really make it secure.
Excellent.
Yeah. And all the modern DNS servers support this stuff. Hey, that's it. I got through the entire presentation that I wanted to. So
Cool.
I'm going to run through some questions since you can't see them.
I cannot see them at all. Yeah. I can just sit here and smile.
Yeah. All right. So the Mask of the Red Death. You know, some of this, the Mask, I knew it was going to be from Tullowit. What do we got? I got 12 minutes. I'm going to go back about 10 minutes worth of questions. 20 minutes. There's 339. Tullowit. Yeah, Texas declared independence on the internet.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the beauties of Zoom, even with the crazy, so Dave started the Zoom meeting. We connected to YouTube. Dave crashes in the middle of the Zoom thing. The Zoom just keeps trucking.
Pumping.
And we can still just jump right back in, and the stream is still going. It's like, good Lord, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, Zoom is
It's
really
awesome.
impressive.
I love living in the future.
Yepper. Jason Helms. Mostly people are just commenting. I'm passing 344. Set up your phone as a hotspot and use laptop to log in. I've done that. Myself and Kathy Yale went on I did a class one time somewhere up in northern Louisiana. And at the end of the class, she conducted the testing. We're a mobile CompTIA testing site. And because I taught the class, and for 3 other reasons, I'm not allowed to proctor the exam, but she's not certified and any of that, so she proctors the exam. But I'm helpful. I'm good to set the computers up and make sure they're all working, and not a one of them would work. Everybody got sitting at seats, and they can't log in, or they can log in, but nothing works. And after some phone calls to CompTIA, to Pearson VUE, we realized that there was some kind of blockage going on at the facility network that we were using. So she pulls out her Wi-Fi box, and I pull out my phone, and I hooked up half of the class on a hotspot to my phone, and she hooked up the other half on another server on the hotspot to her phone, and we did all the testing. And man, that's living in the future.
Very cool.
Yep. DARPA doesn't care that I talked about them. DARPA's gone, replaced by ARPA. It's okay. Hey, well, we got through all the questions, actually. I didn't miss anything here. Everybody was just entranced.
Mesmerized by our crashing.
Yeah. So what do we got here? We got 9 more minutes. I'm going to look back a little further, see if anything come up. As I thought I saw something that was real. I'm starting back at around 3:30. Undertow, Bill, Dave hole. I went into the Dave hole.
Right.
How's the Linux course plus coming? So there's nothing official. I'm working independently on the side, building a potential curriculum. I've got some resources coming that Scott has ordered for me. I'll do that. So this is going to be a project that takes time, and that's something that's going to happen in a few weeks or probably even in a few months. But in a few months, I'll have a curriculum developed enough that Scott can say, hey, maybe we can do something with this and fix it up and turn it into something. Or maybe he says, good Lord, why do I let you work on these things? And gives the job to his grandniece.
There you go.
But it is making progress every day. And I'll tell you what, I'm trying to make one that fits a lot of shoes, and a learnable arc, and or doing the objectives in order, and that's hard. That's a really hard marriage.
Yeah, but it should be a lot of fun. And even if we don't have immediately have a formal course like on Udemy, there's no reason we can't just start filming and doing independent episodes, just picking out some Linux topics that we like, and just say, hey, or things that people send us email and say, hey, can you talk about X, Y, and Z in Linux Plus? And happy to just start making some episodes.
Yep, we can do that here. We can do that. Scott and I and Mike can film one and just stick it up as a YouTube presentation. So yeah, we got a lot of options. But catch the hint from Scott. Let us know specifically in Linux Plus. Look over the objectives. They're free download. And say, hey, here's something I'd really like to look a lot about. And as I mentioned a week ago or so, I'm probably going to do Git in very relatively near future.
So all very good.
Yeah. Okay, well, we didn't lose much audience for all that, I'm happy to say. So let me throw up just the reminders for people who check in late.
Sounds
and
good.
Who are watching on the archive. Hey, by the way, if you're watching on the archive, and if you're watching live right now, like and subscribe, right? So I get hundreds more people watch the archives than watch this thing live, and I never pointed that out, that if you're on the archive, you can still like us, and I appreciate that, and the company appreciates that.
Yep.
But most importantly, your brethren who want to learn some of the stuff that we've got to present here, they will like that. So otherwise, send us questions, DaveR@TotalSem.com, ScottJ@TotalSem.com. Find me or Scott on Steam at drushtx or Scarhart, SCARHART. And a heart is a deer, so he's a scarred deer.
Aww.
We got weekly specials, 50% off, A+ and Net Plus Total Tester, or Total Tester and Sims Bundle, and Sec Plus Total Tester with Sims coming soon. Good for through this Sunday. Don't run these commands. And remember, Discord. We're going to Discord in, it takes me about 10 minutes or so after we close down here to close up business here and get things going on in the house. So you'll see me between 4:10 and 4:15. I don't know about Scott and his leaky dog if his internet's down.
Well, I've also got my publisher meeting at 4.
It's Friday. You've got the McGraw-Hill meeting.
Yeah.
But I'll be there.
Excellent. Hopefully I'll join you shortly thereafter, depending on how.
Send me text and I'll pass them on to the group.
Right? Sounds good.
So let me see. 5 minutes. What do you got going this weekend? Anything fun?
I think I have a hot date with a Security Plus glossary. And some technical edit in corps. Yeah.
I'll follow up
all
on
Security
that.
Plus all the time.
I'm going to follow up on that with this question. One of the books that you and Mike written, one of the many thousands of books that you and Mike wrote, myself and one of the other employees, Shannon, got glossary duty, and we had a really fun job with glossary duty. First of all, it was the first time I ever played collaborative editing on Google Docs, so that was really cool. So she's working on the top to bottom, and I'm working on bottom to top. And in addition to adding all the new terms from the glossary and terms that you guys wrote, we also had the joyous assignment of pulling out obsolete terms. That was not joyous because that's a lot of research in the new book. Is this term in the new book? All right, off she goes. Or
right.
If this term's not in the new book, should we keep it anyways because it's a useful term?
Right. And
so are you doing the same thing? Are you pulling out obsoletes or just adding new, or do you know?
I'm yes, all the above. And I'm throwing in Easter eggs and jokes and stuff that I can do in my own book that doesn't get me in trouble because,
You're
why not?
exactly right. So Mike adds Easter eggs into his text, and I forgot, yes, there are great things in the glossary. If you have any of Mike or Scott's books or considering getting them, that may be reason enough. Just read through the glossary because there is funny freaking stuff in there.
Yeah, although depending on who my editor is, if they're very serious people, serious-minded folk, they'll be like, is this a real definition? This hang time? Does defenestration really have anything to do with computers? Yeah, no, it's...
I think I've seen Yosemite Sam references in there.
Oh, yeah. No,
you know, watch Mel Brooks movies sometimes. I think we kind of stole a little bit from this in some of our other old videos. So in his cast listing, he will throw non sequitur cast members in there. Best boy, Fred Gibbons. Worst boy, Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. All good. Very fun. Dave, thanks for the drama today.
Yeah, sorry about the technical glitches.
I mean that in a good way. So the DNS stuff was good. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Be well, be safe, be healthy, right?
Right.
Stay safe and keep your mask on, and let's get through this together.
Yep. Well, Michael's not going to throw the switch for another minute and a half, so I'm going to finish up here. I'm checking the end. Alice, by the way, says hi to Michael Smyers. Michael, if you're listening, you know you got a Discord thing, and it's a lot of fun to go over there, Michael. Kevin Lopez, hopefully we get featured on the book somewhere as an Easter egg. Heck of an idea, Scott.
Why not?
I would now be looking at the new 601 Sec Plus book for references to this or these or Mike's. Man, I'm feeling it. Viva la Pivolution. As for me, we get done here today. Tonight.
Yeah, what are you doing this weekend?
Yeah, well, tonight is pack-up night to take the kid back to college.
Wow.
Junior year. He's halfway through junior year because he had a semester transfer from one university to the other, so he had to suck up an extra semester of junk classes. But that doesn't change the fact that we have to drive 8 hours up there and 8 hours back. And our plan, I did it once before. It was the stupidest thing I ever did and swore that I would never do it again. So
and now you're doing it again? Yeah, okay. Especially because, it's probably snowing.
Yeah.
Between here and there.
Yeah, I was watching the weather real closely in the last day or so just to see.
All right. Well, good luck.
Yeah, right. So
And,
we're about ready to wind
hopefully
it
I'll
up
join
here.
you.
As Scott says, thank you all for joining us. Love that you do. Can't wait to do it again next Friday. Mike is going to be here regular time on Monday. I didn't hear him mention anything about a feature topic last time we talked, did you?
Monday is the completion of his
That's right.
custom PC build.
You're exactly right. Part 2. So he got through
Yep.
a bunch of the primary components. He's got to finish up on one of the primaries, and then he's going to get into power supplies and cases, I imagine, and other things like that. I wonder if he's going to talk about peripherals, keyboards, mice.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, we beat monitors to death.
Yeah, but I don't
Which I
think
still
he's
say
even,
one of the best shows you ever did.
that was fun.
God, it was fun. All right, well, we'll let you all go. As Scott says, be safe, be healthy, and until Monday, good night.
Take care, folks.
And now we got to do pause because I don't know how to hear from Michael. Oh, Scott bailed immediately.